March 1958. A fleet of Caterpillar bulldozers cuts into the Bedfordshire countryside, carving a trench that will not stop for 73 miles. Behind them come the Euclid dump trucks and the Ruston-Bucyrus draglines, shifting enough earth to bury central London 6 feet deep. More than 130 bridges span the route, all of it finished in 19 months. When the M1 opened that November, it was the longest stretch of new road Britain had ever laid. So why did the country that invented the railway wait until the late 1950s to build its first proper motorway? The A6 between London and the Midlands in the early 1950s was a study in congestion. Lorries and buses and private cars crawled, bumper to bumper, through every market town between St Albans and Leicester. Germany had opened the Autobahn before the war. Italy had its Autostrada. Britain had a 2-lane road through Luton. The Special Roads Act of 1949 finally made motorway construction legal, but post-war austerity nearly strangled the idea before a single trench was dug. It took until 1951 for the government to commission an engineer to even plan a route. That engineer was Sir Owen Williams, a man who had spent his career thinking in concrete. He had designed the boots factory in Nottingham using reinforced concrete frames when the rest of the profession was still drawing in steel. But this job posed a problem no factory or hotel ever had. The route from St Albans to Crick in Northamptonshire required 131 bridges and 92 culverts. Designing each one from scratch would take years. So Williams created a set of standardized templates, one basic reinforced concrete design that could be stretched, skewed, raised, or narrowed to fit any crossing along the 73-mile route. Inside the Houses of Parliament, the Conservative government under Harold Macmillan had made motorways a political priority. The Minister of Transport was watching, and Williams had just given him a way to get his road built fast. The machines arrived on the 24th of March 1958. John Lying and Sons held the primary contract for the northern stretch, a £14.7 million tender for 55 miles of motorway. Tarmac Construction took the southern section around St Albans. Between them, they deployed £5 million of heavy plant across the English countryside. Caterpillar bulldozers tore through farmland and hillside, shoving thousands of tons of topsoil into heaps along the route. Euclid dump trucks, painted in that distinctive green livery, hauled earth away from cuttings that ran 30 feet deep in places. Ruston-Bucyrus draglines, built at the factory in Lincoln, swung their long booms over trenches to lift out clay and rubble. Motor scrapers carved the subgrade flat, shaving the formation level one pass at a time. Graders followed to true the surface. Steamrollers compacted the Hertfordshire sections. And through all of it, not a single high-visibility jacket in sight. The men worked in donkey jackets and flat caps, standing next to machines that could flatten them without slowing down. A 355mm thick bed of dry, lean concrete was laid as the road base, topped with 2 layers of rolled asphalt. The original plans called for dual 2-lane carriageways. But just as the earth-moving began, the specification changed. The M1 would be dual 3-lane, the first motorway in Britain to carry 3 lanes in each direction. Every calculation had to be redone. The machines already cutting the route had to widen their corridor without losing a single day. Nobody asked if it was possible. The contract said 19 months, and Lying was not about to argue. The schedule was tight. The weather made it tighter. The summer of 1958 brought the worst rainfall in living memory across southern England. June through August turned the construction corridor into a brown scar of standing water and liquid mud. Aerial photographs from that period show every cutting and every trench flooded to the brim. The Caterpillar tracks sank, and the Euclid trucks could not reach the dumping grounds. The newspaper headline read, "Rain stops the motorway machines." The contract allowed 19 months, 1 mile every 8 days. Fall behind that schedule, and John Laing would answer to the press, the Treasury, and a transport minister who had staked his reputation on opening day. That minister, a man named Ernest Marples, had built his own career in the construction business before entering politics. He had more riding on this road than anyone outside Westminster knew. But who were the men standing in those flooded cuttings? Up to 5,000 workers were on the route at any given time, though the total workforce across the project reached as many as 19,000. Many were Irish labourers and ex-fishermen from northeast Scotland, driven south by unemployment back home. They lived in temporary camps strung along the motorway corridor, some of them housed in converted prisoner-of-war sites left over from the war. The BBC sent Ewan McColl and Peggy Seeger to record their voices for a radio ballad called Song of a Road. In Hut 16 of the workers' hostel at Newport Pagnell, they found 26 men. 19 of them were ex-fishermen from Kilkeel in Northern Ireland. One, a heavy tractor fitter called James Hunter, had spent years following the big machines across open-cast mines in India and construction sites in Rhodesia before landing on the M1. Wherever the heavy plant went, the fitters followed. This is what we do. The machines, the engineering, and the construction that shaped Britain. Hit subscribe, and we will see you next week. By the autumn of 1959, the concrete had cured and the asphalt was down. Those standardized bridges that Williams had sketched as templates were now standing in reinforced concrete across 4 counties. Each one had been poured in situ using mass concrete because transporting precast sections to remote crossings along the route was still impractical at this scale. The formwork went up, the concrete went in, and the shuttering came off to reveal solid, functional overpasses that became the signature of the early M1. Dozens of them still carry traffic today, more than 60 years after the last shuttering bolt was pulled. They were never meant to be beautiful. They were meant to be fast to build and strong enough to last. On both counts, Williams delivered. The entire first phase of the M1, 55 miles of carriageway built by Laing alone, required 130 bridges and 92 culverts. By modern standards, a project of that scope would take a decade of planning before a single foundation was poured. On the 2nd of November 1959, Ernest Marples stood at the Pepperstock Junction near Luton and opened the motorway to the public. The road had no speed limits, no crash barriers, no central reservation barriers, and no lighting. It did not even have hard shoulders. Drivers pulled onto the carriageway and drove as fast as their engines would take them. Marples looked at the traffic streaming past, and he reportedly muttered, "My God, what have I started?" Sightseers gathered on bridges at Weedon in Northamptonshire just to watch the cars below. The Watford Gap service station opened the same day, although the buildings were unfinished and food had to be served from temporary sheds. Within 5 years, an AC Cobra being prepared for the Le Mans 24-hour race hit 185 miles per hour near Northampton in the early hours of the morning. The police launched an investigation. By 1967, the 70 miles per hour speed limit had become law. But here is the detail that everyone missed at the time. Ernest Marples, the man who cut the ribbon, held 80% of the shares in a civil engineering firm called Marples Ridgeway, a company that built roads. He had promised to sell his stake when he became transport minister. He transferred the shares to his wife instead. 5 years after opening the M1, Marples appointed Dr. Richard Beeching to reshape Britain's railways. The Beeching cuts closed thousands of miles of track and hundreds of stations. The freight that once moved by rail shifted onto the motorways that companies like Marples Ridgeway were building. And when the questions finally caught up with him, Marples fled to Monaco to avoid prosecution for tax fraud. He never returned to Britain. 73 miles of road, 131 bridges, and 19 months of machines grinding through some of the worst weather in living memory. The M1 proved that Britain could still build on a scale to match anything on the continent. Ernest Marples promised the road would take the agony out of driving. The average speed on the M1 today is 47 miles per hour. British shipyards once tried to build the largest warship the world had ever seen. It took 4 years to construct and 3 minutes to destroy. The story of HMS Hood is on screen now.